China's richest man is a communist. A top executive from Huawei gets arrested in Canada. And finally, the Pope's deal with the devil has gone sour. Who would have thought? This is China Uncensored. Welcome back to China Uncensored. I'm your host, Chris Chappell. You know, as I always say, just because you're a communist doesn't mean you can't make a little profit. And that's why I applaud Jack Ma. The billionaire founder of Alibaba, Jack Ma, was accidentally outed as a member of the Chinese Communist Party by party mouthpiece People's Daily in a list it published of 100 Chinese people who had made extraordinary contributions to the country's development over the last 40 years. Now, Ma had always been a bit vague about his relationship with the Communist Party. In fact, Ma even gave the advice to his employees that when dealing with the government, love them, don't marry them. Easier said than done. I'd be his Christopher Robin any day. Now, as a party member, Jack Ma would be required to put the party's interests above all else. And one of the party's interests is interest. Party members have to pay party dues, 2%. And since Ma is worth over $35 billion, that's a lot of party interest. Ma isn't alone. A recent survey found that 1/3 of China's private sector entrepreneurs are party members. The question is, why did Jack Ma get outed now? Earlier this year, Jack Ma announced he was retiring as Alibaba's CEO, leading many to speculate he was being forced out by the party. Which I get. The only thing more common than a rich communist is a purged communist. And in Xi Jinping's anti-corruption campaign, a lot of people who used to be untouchable have been taken down. Though typically the way it works is you don't go for the big guy, you go for smaller people and work your way up. So I wouldn't worry too much about Ma, unless lower level guys in Alibaba were getting arrested and Well, stay tuned to China Uncensored for more updates. Speaking of rich Chinese people, the CFO of Chinese tech giant Huawei has been arrested in Canada. Her name is Meng Wanzhou. She's the daughter of Huawei's founder. The U.S. wants to extradite her to face charges in New York. She's suspected of violating U.S. trade sanctions by shipping U.S.-made items to Iran. Canadian authorities apparently nabbed her while she was transferring flights at the Vancouver airport, which is why you should always fly non-stop. Meanwhile, in Australia, a well-placed member of parliament turned out to have some pretty shady connections to the Chinese Communist Party. This is West Australia's Labour MP Pierre Yang. He said that when he was filling out his parliamentary register of interests, he overlooked declaring his membership in the Northeast China Federation Inc. and the Association of Great China. He even was a legal advisor of those groups until August 2017, several months after his parliamentary term started in May of 2017. The problem is, both of those organizations are linked to the Chinese Communist Party. And this follows a disturbingly similar pattern of the party getting people who share its interests into the Australian government and society. And not everyone in the Australian government believes that Yang merely overlooked his membership. I find Mr. Yang's excuse that he overlooked his membership of 2 associations which promote the foreign policy interests of the Chinese government to be highly improbable. All incoming members of parliament are briefed by the clerks about their disclosure responsibilities. It's even less likely since he was the government's whip in the Legislative Council, so he should have known the laws. Now, West Australia's Premier, Mark McGowan, has said he vouches for Yang's character. But recently, 2 other Australian government officials were revealed to have connections to one of the same groups. Over the last 2 years, more and more evidence has come out that the Chinese Communist Party is trying to influence politics in Australia. But, I understand. Chinese money is very tempting. And no one knows that better than Portuguese President Marcelo Rebelo de Sousa. While the rest of the European Union is scrutinizing Chinese investment, in Portugal, China's Belt and Road Initiative has found support. And when Chinese leader Xi Jinping came to visit this week, President de Sousa was literally drooling over Chinese money. Let's see that again. But it's not just Australia and Europe the Chinese Communist Party is trying to influence. According to this new report from top China experts in the United States, Beijing is trying to do the same in the US. The report says, while Americans are well acquainted with China's quest for influence through the projection of diplomatic, economic, and military power, we are less aware of the myriad ways Beijing has more recently been seeking cultural and informational influence, some of which could undermine our democratic processes. The goal is to not only redefine China's place in the world as a global player, but they also have put forward the notion of a China option that is claimed to be a more efficient development model than liberal democracy. I mean, I've only been saying that for the past 6 years, and they didn't cite me at all. But hey, it's cool. But even as China tries to influence America, it's still the US that brings home the bacon. China is suffering from a severe case of swine flu. This little piggy went to market, this little piggy stayed home, and this little piggy became patient zero and had to be shot. Now, even though China has put tariffs on US pork as retaliation for the trade war, China is dealing with a major shortage of pork, and Chinese people love pork. The written character for family is literally a pig in a home. China imported almost 10,000 tons of American pork just for the week of November 22nd. This represents a 72% share of all US pork export deals during that week. Although it makes sense when you realize the pork shortage could also be due to the large number of Uyghur Muslims under surveillance who now love eating pork. Twitter is banned in China, but that hasn't stopped some Chinese netizens from having personal Twitter accounts. But recently, Chinese Twitter users have been invited to tea with police and then forced to close their accounts. The good news is, this ban does not include the Twitter accounts belonging to state-run media like China Daily, People's Daily, Xinhua, Global Times, and CGTN. And finally, hey, Vatican, you know how you made that deal with the Chinese Communist Party that has been persecuting Christians since, forever? Well, it might have been a bad idea. In September, Pope Francis agreed to recognize 7 bishops appointed by the officially atheist Chinese Communist Party. In exchange, the party said it would recognize the authority of the Vatican. Well, guess what? The party lied. And now, one of the bishops the Pope appointed has been disappeared.
Curse your sudden but inevitable betrayal.
You know, I feel like I get to use that clip a lot on this show. Look, I know the Pope is a liberation theologist, which is sort of a synthesis between Christian theology and Marxism, but it seems the Vatican is learning the hard way that a deal with the Communist Party might just be a deal with the devil. What do you think? Leave your comments below. And before you go, now is the time when I answer a question from a fan who supports China Uncensored on the crowdfunding website Patreon. Evan Riera Marsh asks, "Hey Chris, is China Uncensored biased? Are there any rules you guys use when making videos to try and minimize bias?" Of course I'm biased. I'm biased in favor of freedom and against authoritarian regimes lying and killing their own citizens. But this is a good question, Evan. Even when you're biased like me, it's important to look at all the facts. But that doesn't mean giving equal weight to the side that's lying. The Chinese Communist Party says there's no human rights problem in China. That is a lie. The Chinese Communist Party says it's lifted millions of people out of poverty. That's another lie. And I prefer to directly tell you when someone is lying rather than hide behind language that gives equal weight to both sides. That being said, on China Uncensored, we strive to be rigorous with our facts. We can back up any claim we make. And when some other media get things wrong, like the reporting on China's social credit system, we do our best to make sure we tell the whole story. Of course, that doesn't mean we're infallible and we never make mistakes, but we do our best. Also, if you ever see a mistake on China Uncensored, just know that the person who made the mistake was not me. It was my producer, Matt. And we're able to keep doing what we're doing thanks to support from the fans of the show. So, thanks for your question, Evan. And if you'd like to support China Uncensored, consider supporting the show with $1 or more per episode on the crowdfunding website Patreon. Link is below or on the end screen. Thanks for watching this episode of China Uncensored. Once again, I'm your host, Chris Chappell. See you next time.